Welcome back to the Sensible Mama podcast. I am Paulina Westcott, your host. Very excited to be here with you today. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with a mama that you think would find it useful. And with no further ado, I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. She is a birth and postpartum doula as well as a childbirth educator, and she serves the Atlanta, Georgia area. So Christina, welcome. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I've been very excited to talk to you. I really enjoyed the chat that we had over the phone. And over to you. Yeah, let's start with tell us your story.
Yeah, so thank you for connecting and letting me come on. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of my births, kind of a brief overview. And so I'll just say with my first, I ended up going 17 days late and had a failed induction and an emergency C-section because I've developed a fever. And then around 3 days postpartum, my son was admitted to the NICU. And so I spent a total of 11 days in the hospital. So that was a whirlwind experience and kind of a welcome to motherhood boot camp. And yeah, that was crazy. Then a couple years later, after trying for a while, we ended up pregnant with our second, planned a VBAC. Didn't know at the time what the difference was between a VBAC friendly and VBAC tolerant provider. My provider definitely was tolerant. And so at 41, I think it was 41 and like 3, somewhere in there, I had a repeat C-section because I was told my body just wasn't going to do this. And I believed that lie, unfortunately, because shortly thereafter, around 11 months later, unexpectedly, with trying not to get pregnant, fell pregnant again. And that was an interesting experience because I didn't find out until I think I was between 4 and 5 months pregnant with her before. I was nursing when I got pregnant and then stopped nursing and then didn't get my cycle back for like a few months. And that's what made the doctor like, hey, take a pregnancy test. And so we were, unexpectedly welcoming our 5th child. And I had a really very, very challenging pregnancy with her. My back pain would get so bad that I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. And then I struggled a lot with low blood pressure to where I couldn't drive. You know, already having 4 kiddos at home with some in high school and middle school and, all over the place. It was quite a season to try to navigate and very stressful to get the support that I needed to, even just take care of my family. And then, we'll fast forward a bit to labor. I went into labor I started contracting sporadically around 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Oh, no, it would have been Thursday. And then labored all day. And then around, 7 o'clock that night, I had, been communicating with my doula all day. And around 7 o'clock that night, she was listening to me labor and she was like, hey, we probably should go get you checked out. So we went and did that. And I remember I was putting my shoes on and my water broke and I was so excited. And my 16-year-old stepson at this time was like, I don't want to know what happened. Like, don't tell me anything. So that was quite comical. But I felt that textbook like pop and little gush of fluid that people talk about. So that was exciting to experience that for the first time. And then I got to the hospital. I was only 1 centimeter. And so, this was probably more of prodromal labor, getting her into a better position. And so I wanted to go home. The OB nurse and my ex-husband convinced me to stay. And really, that's just the Lord's grace and being able to stay there and be safe because, I'm going to get to what happened. But truly, I labored all night long. At one point, I begged them to let me off the monitor and get in the shower. And it really felt like, I remember vividly, like the only thing that helped was putting the shower like on my low back. And it felt like I was in there for 2 or 3 minutes. And then the nurse came in and was like, okay, we got to get you back on the monitor. And I just kind of looked at her with this
man.
death stare, like, leave me alone. This is the only, because, you know, kind of the narrative of this, of my birthing experiences in certain aspects is a lack of support. And I vividly remember, you know, being in that laboring room before I got into the shower and just, I don't have my ball. I don't have my bag. I don't have my essential oils. Like, I thought we were going to get checked and go home. And I didn't have like what I had worked for months to prepare to help me cope through labor. And my ex-husband just laid down and went to sleep. And I was having intense contractions, moaning. Like, I remember moaning, and it was hard to work through. And so I just begged the nurse to let me in the shower. And it was just it was interesting because that was the only thing that was working. But I also understand at the same time, you know, the hospital has to check on the baby. And I was a VBAC times 2, right? Like, not even a first time VBAC candidate. And so got back on the monitor. That was probably around 2 to 3 a.m. Labored more, um, just, you know, contractions. I don't remember how close they were, far apart, or anything like that. I just remember they were intense. And so around 8:30, I was just exhausted because at that point I'd been up 24 hours because I forgot to mention the day before when I was kind of contracting all through the day. My stepdaughter had injured her arm, so I was trying to get her to the hospital to get x-rays and, like, you know,
My
mom
goodness.
duty. Like,
Oh,
you don't get to clock out just because you're potentially in labor. So yeah, big
man.
mistake. I will not. I tell my doula clients, dude, go to sleep. Go to sleep, please. You just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some. But yeah, around 8:30 Saturday morning, I decided to get the epidural, which was not what I wanted. And then the hospital informed me that my partner could not stay in the room for the procedure, and I was like, what is happening in this place?
Wait, hold on. For the procedure, the epidural procedure?
Yeah, they said dads could not be in attendance, that they had to step out because they had a dad pass out,
Wow.
which, right,
Goodness.
like, for one to do that and then that to be the blank, give him a chair. So again,
Right?
it felt like, you know, my support is just like, he's finally awake. You're actually supporting me. Like, let me have that support through this. And this nurse, bless her heart, she's one of those, like, old school, like, my way or the highway kind of nurses. She was very kind and gentle in that moment. And the my way or the highway, that will come into play in a bit. Yeah, so got the epidural, decided to go to sleep, slept for a while, text my mom. She had flown in, and I was like, go get me some food. And she was like, I'm not bringing you food. And I was like, don't tell a pregnant lady you're not bringing food if she tells you. I was like, you better not come in this hospital without food because I'm starving. I haven't eaten all night. I remember that. That was a funny, you know. So I was texting my mom about, I don't know, 10:15, 10:20. And by 10:30, there was a rush of doctors and residents, and all of these people rushed into my room. Apparently, the baby's heart rate had tanked, and they were trying to do, I forget what it's called, the electrode that they put in the baby's scalp. They were trying to place that. They were flipping me back and forth, and I had oxygen on, and it was like, it was just, it felt like there was 100, there probably wasn't 100 people in the room, but there were a ton of people. And just, you know, one shouting over the other, and the nurse, that fiery, that, you know, my way or the highway, she was standing next to me giving me directions of what to do, and it was just a lot of commotion. And so then, you know, the nurse was watching the monitor and watched, like, the heart rate really tank again. And she goes, that's it, I'm calling it, we're going to the OR. And I ended up very grateful for her attitude, and kind of, because come to find out, nurses aren't supposed to make that call. Residents are supposed to make that call. And so I'm so grateful that she had the guts, for lack of a better word, to step in and intervene, and you know, really be one of the reasons that it saved my daughter and our lives. So we rush out of the labor room. We go down the hallway into the OR, and there's, frenzy of people, just people, again, yelling at each other and just, why didn't you hear the page? And, I'm like, well, they're here now. Like, what does it matter? And, it's just really interesting when you're in scenarios like that, how you just remember like very specific details. One detail I'll never forget is this black man with dreads. They put me on the OR table, and he picked me up under my arms and just shoved me to the top of the OR table like I was a rag doll. And I just thought, like, oh my gosh, like, how strong are you? But then in taking time to process everything that happened, like, he had adrenaline going. Like, we got to save these people's lives. So it was really kind of very interesting to watch this room of people and like everything kind of fall into place very quickly to where, we're gonna do this operation very, very quickly. So, because around 10:20 is when everyone came in our room. My daughter was born at 10:50, and so it was a very quick, very, very quick process. And so there was again lots of activity, yelling, and da da da. And my OB came in and he just screamed, "Everybody quiet!" And you could hear a pin drop in that OR. And I was just like, "Wow!" Like, I'm scared now. And so he wanted to listen to the baby's heart rate. He starts the procedure, and then he announces, "Oh, your uterus ruptured." And that, for me,
Oh my goodness.
was just crushing. If I'm just totally honest, that was the one thing I was so petrified of. I did so much research, so much prayer, so much physical preparation, mental, emotional, all these different, I did so much work in that 5-month pregnancy, right? That to prepare for a VBAC. And then for the one thing, it was such a small percentage, but I fell into that percentage. And that was soul crushing in that moment. Because, too, we had to get things going so quickly. My child's father was not there with me. I was in the OR by myself. And so it was a lot to navigate and process. And they pulled the baby out, and there was no sound. That was another thing that was really hard for years for me to think about and process, because there's supposed to be noises when the baby's born. That's what we're taught. And her APGAR, if for those who know what that is, it was 1. And, they took her quickly to the warmer, yada, yada. And they finished, sewing me up. She had gone to the NICU. And then at some point, her dad came in and, was kind of going between me and the baby and different things. And I remember vividly, it'll make me emotional. She had been crying in the warmer, and then they brought her over to me to give her kisses, before they took her to the NICU, and she immediately stopped crying. And I just remember that, like, this baby just needed her mama. We're our baby's only mom. Like, no one can fill that role in that place. So that was just so precious. And then, I go to recovery and all of that. It was a blessing. I had plenty of colostrum to give to. I had 3 times as much colostrum as she needed. So that was a blessing. She didn't need any formula. That was very important to me. And then when they took me from recovery to my postpartum room, I was able to go through the NICU. That doesn't happen in a lot of hospitals. But the nurse, again, the I'm gonna shove elbows and get what I want nurse, she made that happen. And that, again, just such a precious thing for me. Little glimpses of hope and positivity in this very traumatic experience. And I remember just holding her for the first time, and there's pictures that don't do it justice, but just holding her, looking at her like, you are a miracle. You weren't supposed to be here. We weren't trying to have children. We were doing everything to prevent pregnancy. Like, I had this terrible pregnancy that I had to fight through day in, day out. And then I had to fight through contraction in and out, like, and then delivery. Like, I just remember that moment. It changed me, honestly. So then, let's fast forward some time. I had gone to the NICU a couple of times that day and was pumping and doing all the things. And it had gotten to, when the sun was well down and settling in for the night. And I was like, I just need to go see my baby. Can you please wheel me to the OR? Or the OR, goodness. The NICU. Her dad did not want to. He was exhausted. It had been a whirlwind day for him too, right? Like supporting and different things. I didn't stop nagging. I'll admit it. I was a nagging wife that day, and I just need to go see my baby before I'm up all night pumping and listening to all these other babies cry. I need to see my baby before I go to sleep. And he pushes me into the NICU, and the pediatrician goes, I was just ordering discharge papers. And I was like, see, I knew I needed to come. Like, and that, like, I was a little kid on Christmas morning. Like, my baby's coming back to my room. Okay, let me call, like, this is happening. Now, it did take like another 2 or 3 hours, but guess who did not go to sleep after that? I was so
Right?
pumped to get my baby back. So that's, just one of the miracles that happened during that whole experience was she only spent around 11, 12 hours in the NICU. To be on death's doorstep and an APGAR of 1 at birth, and then, just a complete 180 less than 12 hours later. Just mind-blowing. Babies are so resilient.
It never ceases to amaze me. And my last doula client was laughing at me because I was saying, I'm like, babies are so bouncy. You have no idea how bouncy babies are. They can be, like you said, they can be at death's doorstep and moments, hours, sometimes days, but like this much time later, they are bright, bubbly, beautiful, healthy. Like the resilience is
Mind-blowing.
unreal,
Yeah,
unreal.
it's mind-blowing. I just can't think of another way to put it. Yeah, their little bodies are so resilient. So we went home. That was really sweet and special. And her sister was like 19 months old. I still remember those memories of like her just looking at the baby and touching the baby, and it's just so precious. Where her brother, who was 4 at the time, was like, "What is that thing on her belly? I'm not holding her." So he didn't hold her for like the first it was hilarious. I was like, if you don't want to, you don't have to. It's gross. I get it. Like, but yeah. So, during those first couple of days, probably a couple of weeks, I had a dear friend at the time step in and come over and help with the kids and different things like that. And I remember we got home on Tuesday, and then Thursday she was over feeding the baby a bottle, which this tells me like where my mental state was. I always wanted to just nurse my babies. Like my son didn't get a bottle till he's 4 months old, but this kid, the third one, less than a week old, getting a bottle. I was just like, I got to do what I can to navigate this whole experience. And I
Yeah.
vividly remember like she was with the baby and taking care of the other ones, and I was napping, and I woke up and just felt like a truck hit me. Long story short, I had developed an infection and had to go back Thursday evening. Had a fever, I think it was 102. And so was readmitted. And that was a really frustrating admission. They didn't have any room on the postpartum wing. So they put me in like the general part of the hospital. And I had my baby with me. I was like, if I'm going to the ER, like, y'all better figure something out. This kid ain't leaving my side. She almost died. Like, figure it out. And so they
Yeah.
put us in the ER in, like, this very back room and, like, shut the door. And I remember all of that. We can't have this because it was flu season. They were so nervous. But I was like, I take liability if something happens to this baby, but she's not leaving my side. Sorry. So get admitted. And then I remember it took 4 hours because of short staff to just get a glass of water. And I
My
had been
goodness.
given fentanyl, so I wasn't being allowed even out of the bed. I was, couldn't use the restroom in the bed. And I was like, man, if I could just get some water, like just go run and get it and come back, like, which I understand. Fentanyl is a pretty big drug to be on. But, that it just, it began this narrative of like, during labor, I was very alone laboring and didn't feel like I had the support that I needed, and then get readmitted. And during that chunk of time, didn't feel like I had the support that I needed. I remember my older sister drove up when I was readmitted to come and help and support. She walks in and she's like, what do you need? And I was like, a glass of water, please. Like, no one's getting me a glass of, and I had called and asked multiple times. And so, we get released, yada, yada, moving on. And, as is, I guess, normal when you have a new baby, first couple of weeks, people are around, but then, the dust kind of settles and people go back to their lives and different things like that. And, probably around a month postpartum, the sleep deprivation really started to set in. And, I had tried to navigate and figure out some different systems and things that I could do with friends and family, but really no one, when I was reaching out, hey, I'm really struggling here, and communicating what I needed. Some people didn't have the time, some people didn't have the heart to do it. And so again, this kind of lie, I guess I would say, set in of this lack of support, lack of what, I'm communicating what I need, but it's kind of falling on deaf ears here. And so, it just kind of, as time went on and trying to navigate taking care of 5 kids, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And so it just, honestly, it just got worse from there, where my mental health started to diminish. I think a lot of it was the lack of support and sleep deprivation. And so, I had to I had to figure out a way to, cope with this on my own. And that was hard to do because we're a family of Christians. We have a church community. And so it just felt like, what's going on here, where people have just kind of gone on with their lives. And I'm in this place of just intrusive thoughts and just not coping well, staying home with 5 children. I'll be totally, honest and transparent about that. I was not coping well at all.
Yeah.
And so, then I had decided to become a doula after the birth of my first daughter, the 4th child. But then some things happened in our family and decided to put that on hold. Well, then this whole uterine rupture and all this trauma and different stuff happened. And I was like, there's no way that I can go and support clients. Like, I have so much trauma. I don't even trust births anymore. I tried 3 times for a vaginal birth. I failed 3 times. All of these different thoughts and things. But then, I just had an experience really over the course of like a week through different conversations and different things that were happening, where it was made very clear to me this was my calling. And so around, I think I was like 5 months postpartum, I went to training and took my baby with me. It was one of the most special memories that we have. Sidebar, I was recently at a birth at a hospital, and a girl that I did doula training with was my client's nurse for the day. And so she just walks in and goes, "Hey, Christina." And I was like, "Where do I know you from? I know your face. I know your voice. Where do I?" And she's like, "We did doula training together." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are the chances in all of Atlanta and all these hospitals you walk in?" So that was really cool. But yes, went to doula training, and there was a girl there. Her name's Latoya. She is one of the really, really valuable doulas in the Atlanta area, was there. And we kind of linked up after training, and she trained me a little bit, mentored me a little bit. And the first birth that we did together, she was like, "I think the Lord will use this work to heal you and reinstate your trust of birth." And here I am 6 years later, done 100+ births. And she was right. She was so right.
It's so incredible. I mean, your stories could end with somebody feeling scared, nervous, I don't know, like there's so much potential for that to have just been the end and a kind of a dismal
experience.
Sad ending. Yeah. And the amazing thing is that you took something difficult and potentially devastating, and you turned it around and made it something so positive and so vibrant and I mean literally life-giving, in the sense that you are helping moms bring life into this world, and that's just it's very inspiring. I love that.
Thanks. I think it's just, I was actually speaking to someone today about just different things that have happened in my life that are just miracles, and somehow it got brought up. I have a twin sister, and we had what's called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, where basically one twin gets all the nutrients and the other does not. And I was on the do not side of that. And so, we had to be delivered, I think we were around 37 weeks, but I was only 4 pounds, 6 ounces when I was born. Tiny, tiny thing. We have pictures. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so tiny. And so, it's, I think just from day one, my twin sister and I have just had this grit and this fight in us to really kind of just keep going and find just the little pockets of positivity and hold on to those. Because I can attest in the last 6 years, there have been very, very, very dark days and weeks even where I look at myself and I don't even recognize myself. But really, it's been this process of, for a long time, I am a Christian. I didn't believe in medication as a Christian. But then I went through this experience and got to my lowest low and was like, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be this mother. At the time, I didn't want to be this wife. I didn't want to be this friend. I didn't, you know what I mean? I wanted to be better. And so I was on medication for a time. And that was a very humbling experience. But I think that it was needed at the time, and it was, just for a time, and that's okay. It's part of my journey and part of my story. But I want for people to look at this experience as one of redemption and one of hope, that even in the midst of darkness, like, there still is so much light. And, the miracles that were performed when she was born, my health was not great. I had miracles happen where the doctors, I remember him coming, my OB coming the second day. So this would have been Sunday. And he was looking at some papers and he was like, well, I don't know what happened, but you look much better than you did yesterday. And I was like, well, it's a miracle. Like, that's all we can attest to, this experience. And so, I think that while, there were pockets of days or hours or whatever you want to call it, periods of a lack of support in my story, things that I needed. Overall, I began to find a mother and a doula and a Christina even that was in there all along. It just needed to be kind of exercised and worked out. And I think, another message that I want to share with people is that, we all have trauma. Some it's during childhood, some it's during teenage years, some it's during birth, some it's during a work event. Like, we all have hard spots in our experience, in our life, in our, all the experiences that we have. But it's what you do with that matters more than what happened to you. So, like, yes, my uterus ruptured, and yes, my daughter almost died, and yes, these things happened, but at the same time, there's so much beauty in it. Like, my daughter has had developmental delays and has needed more surgeries, services than any of my kiddos combined, but really bonded us because then I get to check her out of school and, like, go on a little, like, mini date while she's getting these therapies that she needs. So just finding that positivity in it. And, so I forgot to say that. So everybody has these traumas that they experience in their life. And I think that in America, we want to really just kind of move on, kind of shove it under the rug, and just, we don't really acknowledge it. Maybe it didn't really happen, and stuff it down and different, kind of those narratives. But I think I didn't want to do that with this story. I knew that this was a really big event. I know the statistics of this happening. My OB, we had a conversation postpartum, like, why did this happen? And he's like, I don't know. It wasn't supposed to happen to you. You had a low BMI, no gestational diabetes. Like, he listed all of these things as to why I was a good candidate for a second VBAC attempt. And so, but this did happen. And accepting and acknowledging that took years, honestly. to get there, but it did happen. Giving yourself time to grieve and to process and to get to, I kind of, the way that I look at it is when this trauma happens, you kind of get on maybe like cobblestone type ground foundation, and it feels kind of uneven and rocky and unstable and all these things. But now I can say 6 years, almost seven next month, goodness, it'll be 7 years. It feels very solid and smooth concrete now versus 3 years ago, it still felt very hard. Her sixth birthday was the first year that I didn't have any negative feelings towards our experience. And I think there's so
Wow.
much power in that. Number one, because it didn't just take a few months. Number two, I showed myself grace that, like, hey, this really big, scary thing happened. And I gave myself all the time that I needed to work through all of, because when a traumatic event happens, right, there's this ripple effect. Like, think about if you throw a rock in a river, there's a ripple. And so figuring out like how far out that ripple went, it was long and deep and wide. And it took 6 years. Did I want it to take that long? No. But
Of course not. No.
gratefully, like at the same time, it was during my daughter's younger years. So she doesn't remember mommy crying on her first birthday, her second birthday, her third birthday. She doesn't remember those things. She remembers her sixth birthday. My mommy was happy and fine all day long. And so I think there's so much value in us giving ourselves the time and space. And for me, one of the big narratives in my second and third postpartum was having that lack of support, but also, kind of shifting that perspective of like, okay, family and my church community aren't able to support as much as I'm needing. What can I do? Because I can only control me.
Yes, exactly. I mean, one of the things that, like everybody's situation is so different. Everybody's got a different community, everybody's got a different background, everybody's got a different personality, frankly, in terms of accepting
Sure.
help and, how receptive you are to your community, even if you have a wonderful community. Some people are just put up a wall about it. So you're dealing with a totally variable,
Factor.
thing. Yeah, but I think it's super important. Like, one of the big takeaways that I get from your story is when you are pregnant, really, like, we do so much preparation for the birth. We do a lot of preparation for the birth. We do our research, we read our books, we learn our breathing techniques, and all those things are important, right? Like, you want to eat healthy, you want to take your prenatals, those things are important. Yes, please do those things. But also, there is the non-physical aspect of birth and postpartum that I don't think we always take into account, because maybe it's just because not enough people talk about it. I'm not really sure. But we just kind of assume, okay, I'm going to give birth and then I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to, figure out, I'm going to read a book about how to change diapers and feed them and watch a video on how to nurse and I'll be good to go, and kind of call it a day. But I don't think we realize how important it is to assess the state of your current support system and your community, and then figure out if there's any tweaks that are needed. Like, hey, do I need to become more open to receiving help? Speaking from my
Sure.
own experience, do I need to change my mind about it being okay to rely on people for a little bit of time? That I don't need to have this aggressive need to do everything myself, because that's going to lead me down a path that is much more difficult to recover, postpartum? Or do I not have people around me? Like, maybe you moved away from your family and you're all by yourself in a state and you don't know people. Okay, so then maybe you hire yourself a postpartum doula, which is something I didn't even know existed until after my second baby. So you can actually build your own community or start going to, like, there's like pregnancy, Pilates or whatever. Like, start building up a group and make it an intentional effort to make sure that you do have a support system postpartum. Any work you can do in that direction is only going to benefit you. It's only going to help you. You're not going to lose because you have more friends and more support and more of a network that's going to. I mean, postpartum is not nothing. The fourth trimester is called the fourth trimester because it is its own very unique chapter of life that has its own struggles again, it looks different for everybody, just the same as pregnancy looks different for everybody and birth looks different for everybody. But postpartum is a major deal. It is not nothing. It's not like you just get 6 weeks of lying in bed and then suddenly you're back to your good old self again. You are a whole new person at the end of that trimester, and especially with your first baby, but I think with every
Right.
baby, you learn new things, overcome new challenges. You have to figure out how to coexist with this child and the other one and the one before that now, and I think that we need to, as a society and as individuals, like really grant that the importance and the respect that it
Yes.
deserves.
Amen. Amen to that. Yeah. And I too, before I had my first, was that person that I could do it myself and very independent, very driven. I am a firstborn twin, and everyone can tell, even when they first meet me, just because of the way, I live my life. And it is vital. When I set out to be a doula, I really only knew about birth work, and I didn't know so much about postpartum. It was actually a Facebook post where an agency in Atlanta was looking for postpartum doulas. And I was like, well, I've had 3 kids, like, I'll apply. And I did, and they wanted to hire me and started giving me clients. Um, and so it's so important. I've served probably around, I don't know, postpartum clients at this point. And, now I'm beginning to get hired for a second time and sometimes a third time because, one of the favorite, I guess, phrases or sayings that I have is moms will remember who held them during their labor, during their pregnancy, during their postpartum. And I was just on the phone this afternoon with a mom that we're working together for the third time. I'm like, my support this time is going to look so different because we have such a good relationship. Some of my clients, I can really truly say, like, these are some of my best friends. And, birth and postpartum is such a delicate, intimate, sensitive, sacred time that you have to be really careful first, like who you welcome into that space, but also, like you're saying, evaluate and analyze whether or not the support your husband's willing to or able. Sometimes they're not able to offer as much as they're willing, but the support they're able to offer, is that enough? Because I look at my third birth, and here I had just had this traumatic birth, and she had her own things going on. I had my own things going on, and then I got readmitted for the infection. And my ex-husband had a week off, but he was still working from home during that week. And so it just,
Mm,
I would never do that again as a doula, honestly. I would say figure
right.
out a way to have weeks off, paid or unpaid, whatever you have to
Yeah.
do. Because, I have so much compassion for that mom. I can even say 6 years later, I'm a different mom than I was when I gave birth to my youngest. But
Mm,
I have so much compassion for that woman because she just was doing the best she could with a really hard. It's hard to have 5 kids, period. And then throw in the dynamics of a blended family where there's another co-parent, and the stepchildren, and just there was a lot of, I'll call them, dynamics. And now I have this newborn baby, and the pain that I experienced after that birth was just indescribable. It literally took 6 months for me to begin to feel myself again. I mean, just
yeah.
crippling.
I mean, my experience was very different. Not anything like that, but even with a very uncomplicated, unmedicated home birth, I still took 6 months also to feel normal after my first child. Like, that's one thing that I also feel is so important in listening to your story. Like, I did not experience anything like what you did. I have nothing but empathy and awe for your resilience and your tenacity and your grit and determination to just carry on in spite of all of the very, very real challenges and obstacles. But somehow, still throughout your story, I can see myself in like little sort of glimmers of the story. I see the things that you're going through. I can empathize with my very limited experience. Like, I mean, I'm a new doula, you know, my hospital births, I've only had a few now and all secondhand, but it's incredible because I don't know, there's just, I don't know what I'm trying to express except that there's something about mothers that we all go through like the same experience in the sense that there are so many similarities throughout, and yet not one single experience is actually truly the same. And there's something so magical about the similarity, but at the same time, the vast and complete and utter difference that we all go through. And at the end of it, we all have the same desire, which is to be an amazing mom and to make sure that our kids are good and are healthy and are raised right. And that core motherhood thing is so impressive. It's so strong. And before I've always wanted to, I was 2 years old. I knew I wanted to be a mom, but I never in my life really understood the magnitude and the strength
Yes.
of motherhood until, and I'm still learning it. You know what I mean? Like I'm still watching moms go through their own births and I'm watching myself and I'm hearing stories now from moms like you on my podcast. And every time, without fail, I get goosebumps. I get tears in my eyes, you know, listening to these stories where moms are just doing impossible, completely, absolutely mind-bogglingly impossible things and coming out on the other end. And they can talk about this and they can have a conversation like this and smile and goodness, laugh about it. Like, what? It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
it
completely
really,
unbelievable. You know what I mean?
yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think that what I keep going back to is just remembering how deep and dark things were. And, you know, I think that experiences come to us in life through our own choices or through choices outside of our, or scenarios outside of our control. I'll say that. But I think that one of my favorite sayings is can't control the, it's kind of cliche, but you can't control the cards you're dealt, but you can control how you play them. And, you know, um, I ended up, you know, I've said ex-husband several times, you know, in the story. I ended up going through a divorce it was finalized in 2022. And I was truthfully and honestly devastated when my marriage ended. But now that it's been 3 years, I'm grateful for it because I'm a completely different mom, doula, person, you know, all the things I mentioned earlier. Just a totally different person than I was, you know, during my marriage. And so I look back on the experiences that I've had over the course of my life. And I think one thing too that has brought it that keeps things in perspective. Because when you go through a traumatic event, you can spiral very easily and kind of get angry and bitter. And you have a choice. You can allow those things to overtake you. And I'll admit, for a time, that was me, very angry. But then, you know, I began to see, you know, well, this close friend ended up, I mean, before I even knew what a postpartum doula was, she was my postpartum doula. And you know, her and I don't have a close relationship anymore, but she will always have a very special place in my heart because of how she held me through that season. And there were other people that, like a family member that wanted to watch my daughter at one point, and I was like, no, my friend can. It just the way that she made me feel, the way she respected me as a mom, the way she respected my kids. You know, it just was this, I don't know, connection that just was so valuable. And I think, you know, to go back and kind of reiterate, it's very important that you evaluate your support system and navigate, you know, what do I potentially need? Because nobody anticipated my uterus would rupture and all of the stuff would happen. But it did. And so we had to pivot. I had to figure out ways to kind of make sure I could get a nap during the day. I remember my I was homeschooling him at the time. He was struggling in biology and we were sitting on the couch and I was trying to tutor him and I just kept falling asleep. Well, I was probably like 3 weeks postpartum and he would look over and just like nudge. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying, but I'm so tired.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah, that was a funny memory. So I think too, the message needs to be figure out your support system, find pockets of joy and laughter, because you might have to dig a little deeper, look a little harder, turn over a few more rocks or whatever.
Mhm.
They're there.
It's true. It's another thing that's super cliche is putting your attention on gratitude. I feel like it's such a catchphrase on the internet these days and all the, the gratitude, whatever. And it got kind of overplayed, which is a shame because it's very easy to forget the good things that you have when there are bad things looking you in the face. And I think naturally we all are inclined to not automatically find the things to be grateful for.
Agreed.
But I think that it's a very important exercise all the time, but I would say especially when times are really tough. When it's the hardest, I think is the most important time to really stop and say, okay, what good can I find in this? What can I be grateful for? How can I use this emotion, whatever it may be, to a positive end? How can I turn this around so that it turns for the better? What can I learn from this? How can I help somebody else with this? Like your story of taking this wildly traumatic experience, you used helping other people as a means to your own recovery to some end. And I think that is so powerful. I think that a lot of people, not only in the world of birth, I think a lot of people could learn from
Yeah.
that. Like, okay, so you're going through something really difficult in any aspect of life. Go try helping somebody else,
I think that, having kind of sometimes an others focused perspective, I can really truly attest. I've had people tell me that you're offering mothers the support that you didn't have, the support that you needed, and
Yeah.
it wasn't there. And I think that, because of these experiences, because of this traumatic birth, and, those feelings of just, a lack of control. I'm a type A control freak, just throwing that out there. But having a lack of control and having a lack of support and trying to navigate and figure these things out, I can connect with moms who are really struggling. I've had moms tell me very deep, dark secrets that they would never, some of them haven't even told them their husbands the things that they've told me.
Mm-hmm.
And, what a gift. What a gift that I get to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this has happened recently after just a few hours of sleep, and go and support and step into this place of you are in your most vulnerable, stretched, rocky scenario. And like, what an honor to be able to show up and step into the mess and bring peace and bring stability and bring support. And it really, I can't express highly enough like how much this work, it's changed my life. It's obviously sustained my family as a single mom for years now, which is such a blessing. But it's just transformed me really in a way that I never imagined it would. I recently went on a trip and saw a woman that has been in my life since I was 10. So she's known me forever. I was just sitting and thinking about like who I was at 10 and then at 15 and then at, 25 and now I'm 40. How different I've been at different phases of like interacting with her and talking with her and different things like that. But I think that's the beautiful part of life is, I couldn't control what this birth became. I couldn't wave a magic wand or pray or, have crystals or whatever it is you believe in. I couldn't do anything to prevent this from happening, but it did. I couldn't do anything to prevent my divorce from happening, but it did. I couldn't do anything to prevent my child from having delays, but she did and does, And so I think that having a perspective of like, again, to go back to the cards, what can I do with this scenario that's presented itself and how can I learn from it? Because I think that, especially as adults, as we age, we kind of get stuck in our routines and just kind of want to, status quo type perspective, but I think there's so much value in continuing to learn. And my grandfather was just amazing. He's my favorite human besides Jesus to ever walk this earth. He was just an amazing person. And even in his 70s, he was teaching himself how to play the piano and teaching himself how to play chess. And
I love that.
he was brilliant. So Tupperware, sidebar, because I'm so proud of him, he helped invent Tupperware, the chemical compound for Tupperware.
Wow.
Brilliant, brilliant mind. And I just used to sit and listen to him and, different stories and like, oh, if I could just be like him. And, I hope that someday my grandkids are saying that about me, that grandma, had this perspective of continuing learning and continuing to grow and evolve and become a better person, a better, just friend and grandmother and mother and all these different that we wear. I think that there's so much value in continuing to learn and grow and true, to be honest with and true to yourself, for those years of grieving this birth experience, I was very true to myself and let myself feel. Today is my daughter's birthday and I am not excited. And I think that there's a lot of strength in recognizing that. Now, do I want her to see that? Absolutely not. This is her day. And this is the birthday she was born. But, I think there can be duality there. I can go out of my bedroom and show her, let's light these candles and make a wish and, open these presents. But there can also, in my own quiet time, be the loss and the mourning and the grief. And I think giving myself that time over the course of several years, I think it honestly made me a better person. And, who knows if I get married again and decide to have more children, I don't know what that will look like. But if I did, I would want to walk into that experience with power and knowledge and strength. And I think had I not gone through, all of the junk and the dirt and the yuckiness of that experience, I would have lost so much fear if I end up pregnant again. So I think the message for me is that people evaluate their support, but also give yourself time. And for some, it might take a year to overcome something like that. But for me, it was 6. It's not going to matter in 10 years how long it took. That's the way I look at it.
Christina, you're amazing. You're very inspiring. I'm in awe. I'm really glad that you shared your story. And I'm just very impressed by your sheer positivity. Like not anywhere through your entire story did I feel burdened or negative, which sometimes you listen to birth trauma stories and you're like, I can't handle it. And you just turned this into such positivity. I'm very impressed by that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
That.
Yeah, it was an honor. This is a wild story. Was a wild journey, but I think that I see a lot of beauty in it now, and I'm grateful for that.
That's amazing. All right. I would love for you to tell people watching where they can find you. And in the event that there's any mamas listening that are in the Atlanta, Georgia area and they're looking to hire you, let them know if and how they can do so.
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Bias Grace, Childbirth Services. I think my Instagram handle is Bias Grace, ATL Doula. For those who don't live in Atlanta, ATL is short abbreviation for Atlanta. And then we also have a website. It's just biasgracechildbirthservices.com. Email, same, Bias Grace Childbirth Services. If people, on Instagram, and we share all kinds of reels of, different information. And every Monday I do a mental health type post, encouragement and things like that, because I've been in the deep, dark shallows and wanted to really use my page to support moms and give them the little glimmers of hope in their journey, because it's so needed.
Absolutely love that. Thank you. I'll make sure to link all of your socials and your contact info in the description so people can easily find it. Thank you again so much. I can't say it enough. I'm so glad we did this despite the technical difficulties at the beginning. We made it through. It was amazing. And And thank you to everybody watching. Make sure you go give her pages a like and a follow so you can get some good tidbits from somebody with a lot of valuable experience. All right, everybody. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.